Welcome back. It's Seth here. Today, I want to talk about how the middle class in Canada is disappearing. And even now, our government is starting to admit that this is the case. Recently, the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney made a comment that Canadians should be ready for some challenges and sacrifices ahead. And the Bank of Canada is telling Canadians to brace themselves for lower living standards in the future.
We won't transform our economy easily or in a few months. It will take some sacrifices, and it will take some time.
I think what's most concerning is that unless we change some other things, our standard of living as a country, Canadians, is going to be lower than it otherwise would have been.
In this video, I'll be discussing why Canada is headed towards losing its middle class. However, before I dive deeper into this video, please remember to hit the like button down below, and if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to help grow our channel. Now that you hit the like button, let's dive in. So before going further, who is actually in the middle class? So to answer this question, we actually have to go back almost a century. Canada's economy improved from 1896 to all the way to 1914. This is when Canada had one of the fastest growing economies in the world. During this time, Canada's population grew quickly, and the Prime Minister at that time, Wilfrid Laurier, had said that the 20th century belonged to Canada as the 19th century belonged to the United States. And by 1921, Canada's economy was growing rapidly. In the 1920s, there was an unprecedented increase in standard of living, as items that had been luxuries such as radios, automobiles, and electric lights were now in almost every single household in Canada. Overall, the middle class is seen to be the backbone of the economy. And the bigger the middle class, the stronger a country is usually deemed to be. Today in Canada, the middle class is usually deemed to be individuals that earn anywhere from $57,000 all the way up to $115,000. And anyone who earns over $115,000 to over $254,000 is deemed to be in the upper middle class. However, the middle class isn't just about having a certain level of income. It's also about being able to purchase a home, a vehicle, and having the ability to save for retirement. However, as years go by, less and less people in Canada are meeting this definition of being in middle class. And there seems to be no change coming anytime soon. So now you're probably wondering, what are the factors that are causing Canada to lose its middle class? So the first reason Canada's losing its middle class is due to the stagnation of wages versus the inflation that Canada has seen. You are probably already feeling this in your everyday life, that the money that you're making doesn't stretch as far as it used to. And you're actually right to feel that way. Stats Canada reports that from 1998 to 2021, the average hourly wage has increased from $24.47 to $30.03. That is only an increase of 22.7% from 1998 to 2021. Now, if we compare this to inflation over the same period of time, producing a cumulative increase of 55.16%. So what this means is that if you had a $100 bill in 1998, it wouldn't have the same buying power in 2021. To have the same buying power, you would need over $155 in 2021 to have the equivalent of $100 in 1998. So here's the thing. Inflation has gone up by 55.16%, and your wages have only gone up by 22.7% over the same period of time, which means that your wages are actually behind more than 32% when you're comparing to inflation. So realistically, your initial $100 in 1998 would mean that you would actually only have a bit over $122 in 2021, which is far less than $155 that you need to keep the same buying power. As inflation keeps growing at a faster pace than your wages, you are going to struggle to buy the same groceries that you could buy last year, to keep up with your rent, utilities, and transportation. And if inflation keeps growing at the current pace, we're going to see more and more Canadians being pushed out of the middle class. Now, moving on to the second reason why Canada is losing its middle class, and I actually think this is one of the bigger reasons, and that is because of the increased housing costs. This is something that the majority of middle class is struggling with, and especially young Canadians. Housing costs have exploded in the past few decades in Canada. The average price of a home in Canada in 2013 was over $392,000. And by 2024, the average price has increased to over $707,000. That's over an 80% increase in a span of just a bit over 10 years. And on top of that, the average price of a home will dramatically increase depending on the city that you're living in. So if you live in Toronto, the average price of a home there is around $1,250,000. And if you live in Vancouver, the average price of a home is $1,150,000. Housing costs have pretty much doubled in the past few decades, but I can guarantee you that your wages have not. So it only makes sense as years go by, you feel like you'll never be able to buy a home. And truthfully, you're not wrong for feeling that way. One of the reasons why the housing costs in Canada have increased so much is that simply we just don't have enough homes to meet our current demand. There's a huge lag with builders building new homes. And the government has put in money to kickstart construction to start building more homes faster. However, these initiatives are still slow, so I don't think the middle class or young Canadians will benefit from these anytime soon. This will only further push more Canadians out of the middle class in the next coming years. Now, moving on to the third reason why Canada is losing its middle class, and that is because Canada has had a debt explosion with the average Canadian. Canada as a whole has a really high household debt when compared to other countries. Currently, Canada is ranked third for the highest debt to GDP ratio, right behind Switzerland and Australia. So the average Canadian has debt from several different areas. According to TransUnion Q1 2025 report, the average Canadian has taken $29,619 in auto loans, $4,415 in credit card debt, over $22,702 in installment loans, $35,183 in line of credit, and over $376,185 in mortgage debt. So in total, the average Canadian has over $468,000 in debt. And this is just the average, which means that there are more Canadians out there that have way more debt than this. Our goal should be to pay down debt as soon as possible. And you want to start off with the debt with the highest interest rate. In this case, it's most likely going to be your credit card debt. Once you have paid down your credit card debt, then you want to focus on the next debt, which has this next highest interest rate. If you don't focus on paying down your debt, that is one easy way to get pushed out of the middle class. Now, the fourth reason why the middle class in Canada is disappearing is because the cost of raising a family has increased dramatically. For decades, the middle class was built on the idea that a parent or both parents could work normal jobs, be able to afford a home, and raise a family. However, today, raising a family has become one of the biggest financial pressures for most Canadians. Just this year, on average, Canadian parents are paying over $543 per month for childcare services, according to Stats Canada. Over $500 in childcare services is a lot of money to the average family. And if you think that's bad, City News reported that for a family of four, groceries would cost $800 more than prior years. Food prices were expected to increase by 3 to 5% in just 1 year, which will bring the average family of four to pay over $17,000 per year for groceries. That's over $1,400 a month. Also, there's a very good chance that you probably want your kids to participate in some sports or activities. And on average, this is going to cost an average family over $1,000. And if you want them to compete in a competitive league, it's going to cost you anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 per year. So with the steep costs of childcare, the increase in grocery prices, and paying absurd amount of money to have your child play in sports or other activities, it's no wonder that the birth rate in Canada has been dropping year over year, when the average Canadian is just struggling to make ends meet. Now, I do want to touch on one big force that's really reshaping the middle class, and that's wealth inequality. The gap between the rich and the poor isn't just widening, it is accelerating. If you didn't know, the top 10% of the families in Canada own over 53% of all wealth, while over the top 20% own over 69% of the wealth. By contrast, the middle 40% of the families share about 27.6% of the wealth, and the bottom 40% only share about 3.3% of the wealth. So the saying that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poor is very much true, and we are living through this time where this gap is only getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it doesn't seem like it's going to stop anytime soon. If you're wondering, how are the rich getting richer and the middle class losing their wealth to the rich? Well, it's because the rich really diversify where they invest their money when compared to the middle class. If you look at the chart, the average middle class individual will have most of their net worth coming from their primary home, and then a small amount from their pension accounts and liquid assets. Now, if you compare this to the rich, it's the complete opposite. The rich have a very small portion of their net worth coming from their primary home. Most of their net worth is coming from business equity, investment properties, stocks, securities, mutual funds, and trusts. So here's an overview how this wealth is increasing. So on average, most people experience their salaries increase from 1 to 3%. And most middle class individuals have some sort of salary. And even some rich individuals will have salaries. However, now this is how the rich get richer. So an average price of a home usually increases anywhere from 5% to 10%. More so, it's closer to 5%. The middle class individual only has one property, usually their primary home. And even if that goes up in value, that doesn't mean anything until you actually sell that property. Whereas the rich, they have multiple properties. So their net worth is increasing exponentially and they're getting monthly income from these investment properties. On average, stocks grow from anywhere from 7 to 10%. And the rich really do focus on creating a strong, robust portfolio where middle class usually hesitates to invest. And for most businesses, you can scale them exponentially. It really comes down to the level of effort and risk you're willing to take. And what we find is that most rich individuals are willing to take more risk to get higher reward, where middle class tends to shy away from this. So on average, the middle class usually just focus on getting a good salary and buying a primary home, whereas the rich are looking to diversify their money in all different sectors of the economy. So if you don't want this gap widening for yourself, there are things that you can do to help close this gap and to help you become wealthier. The main things you have to focus on is to invest and create multiple streams of income. Your salary should not be the only source of income that you earn. I personally would say that everyone should be investing in the stock market, and everyone should be buying a low-cost index fund to help you grow your wealth. And another area that can really help you to grow your wealth is to buy an investment property. If you're willing to put in the work, real estate could be a great way to make additional income and to grow your wealth over time. And if you have a skill or passion, I definitely would recommend starting a business. And nowadays, you can make a business out of anything, and eventually your business could be your full-time job. By diversifying your income, you're giving yourself and your family the best chance to help close this gap between the rich and the poor and to help yourself become wealthier. I hope this video helped you to understand how the middle class in Canada is disappearing and how serious of a problem this actually is. That's it for this video. If you guys enjoyed this video, please stay tuned for future videos. And until next time, remember to keep investing.